best work I've ever done started with laughter. Laughing at the boss's indecisiveness. Laughing at our friend whooping our butts at Koosh basketball and walking away with a wad of ones that would make a stripper blush. Laughing at the dog farting in our office. Laughter is like creatine for your productivity muscles. I once laughed so hard I threw my back out and went on a months-long script writing binge high on icy hot fumes. Laughter is the greatest thing ever, and yet most of our workplaces are sterile, saccharine, and stupefying. Or, as my guest Rob Feld says on this week's podcast episode, they're not human environments. Rob is a filmmaker whose latest project, Jesters and Fools, brings humor to the often touchy topic of political polarization. It's freakin' fantastic. And Rob's right about our workplaces. Too many are simply not human. How can we possibly laugh in such an environment? How can we create or connect to the truths that lead to interesting new things? How can we see our coworkers as fellow juicy meatbags filled with interesting and different points of view? The truth is, too often, we don't. We don't see each other as people, but as obstacles to getting what we want. We try to steamroll our thoughts through the system instead of coming back to the one human thing that has brought us together since the first caveman drew a stick figure rabbi and priest walking into a bar. Laughter. It's not just medicine, it's crack for collaboration and corporate profits. Yet, for some reason, we've decided we don't want that. I do. Rob does. What about you? Welcome to the DesuckifyWork podcast, the show where we cut through the BS and find ways to make work more fun, more human, and less ridiculous. All of which makes your business more profitable, by the way. Today's episode is a part of the ProHuman Series, in partnership with the ProHuman Foundation, where Rob is an advisor. If you enjoyed this one, please like, share, rate, review, or subscribe to the podcast. Let the desuckifying begin. Here's Rob. Okay, Rob Feld, welcome to the DesuckifyWork podcast.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you here. I think we're going to dig into a couple of interesting things today. I mean, you were connected with me through an organization called the ProHuman Foundation, where you're an advisor for, and I'm a fan of. And I've also interviewed a few other folks from there already. I've interviewed Dennis DiMaggio and Xander Keg already, and I'm going to be speaking to some more folks. So I'm looking forward to kind of putting that series together. But before we dive in too much, I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself. Tell us a bit about what you do and how you came to be doing it.
God, that's not a straight line. It's, I mean, I'm a film guy. I'm a journalist. I write on film. I teach a film class at NYU. I produce, direct festival films and brand content and documentaries, which is, I think, probably what got us together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a juggling act.
Do you like the juggling?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I like the juggling. There are other times where it's like, hey, would like less juggling and just more, I don't know, tightrope, less juggle, tightrope without the juggle.
Yeah.
But yes, look, it's interesting and varied and diverse. So yes, ultimately.
Yeah. Do you have a vision for that more tightrope like future for yourself?
It's you want to get yourself to the place where you're spending more time making the things than you are developing the thing and getting yourself to the point where you can make the thing.
Yeah.
So it's more like, hey, here's the idea, money, great, let's go, as opposed to, hey, here's the idea, money, no, okay, money, any money, no.
Yeah. A little bit of money, maybe.
A little bit of money, then you learn a little bit more, and you start anyway. So yeah, you want the less uphill and more.
Yeah.
I will say this, and I tell my students this all the time, that the development process forces you to make it better. And you will see many filmmakers who do your favorite filmmakers, and then things get maybe a bit too easy for them. And then all of a sudden their films start to suck, and you kind of wonder why. And I think a lot of it is everyone around them just says yes.
Yeah.
And that's not good for anybody. So, even when you're at that point, you need the discipline.
Yeah. And that's an interesting thing, right? Because I think that would hold true in almost every business. I mean, I think about folks who get to the top of any company even, and people don't want to say no to them. And everybody laughs at your jokes. And like, it's like, and it's
Yeah.
probably feels good for a bit, but there's a point where you realize like nobody is holding me accountable for anything.
No, I mean, all but the most disciplined of us need the pushback and
Yeah.
need to say no and say, you know what? You need to just kill that one because
Mm,
I get why, but it's not going anywhere.
yeah. So in your juggling act of work, what role does work play for you in your life?
I mean, it's funny. I have kids now, so it rebalances certain
Mm,
things. But in that, I'm a filmmaker, and the ugly truth is we would all do that. We would all pay to do that, and frankly do,
yeah.
whether you're getting paid or not.
Yeah.
So, it's one of those things that's a calling or a compulsion or an addiction or it's some
Mm.
kind of disease, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's a gene mutation. So you really can't help yourself. So it, you know, plays a very significant role in my sense of self and what occupies my head. But that's very different than, going to a job that you just go to as a job. But the challenge there is you need that thing that is your passion to also satisfy what a job gives you. And that
Yeah.
doesn't happen either.
Yeah. It's interesting. I come from the world of advertising, which is a bit of a blend of these things, right?
Sure.
There are often times where you feel similar to the way you might feel working in film because you're making things, you're creating things, you're putting stuff out into the world. But there are times where you very much don't feel that. And the weight of all the decision makers and stakeholders in it becomes, heavy. And what I found is for most folks in that space, having something outside a creative endeavor of any kind that fuels that passion side is super
Oh, yeah.
critical.
Totally. Totally.
I'm curious for you, the fact that it is a bit of a calling slash addiction, does that mostly feel like something that's a blessing or a curse to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly, I don't know. It depends. Ask my wife, I
Yeah.
guess. What is it to her and what is it to me? Uh, but it is yes and I don't in both in all things.
Yeah.
When it's great, it's the greatest blessing in the world. When
Hmm.
really frustrated and struggling and wondering why this didn't work or whatever, it's the worst. So that's the nature of it.
Mm. Yeah. I think that's true for a lot of folks. Like, and sometimes just accepting that you can have both sides of that in your life and be okay with that as long as you're connecting somehow to that bigger thing, whatever that is for you.
Yeah, and look, it helps to have kids. It really does. I mean, because they are the meaning of all things. Like you look at them and you're like, well, there is never anything I could ever make that would top that. So
Mm.
let me remember that when
Yeah.
this thing just blew up on me and it gets you through.
Mm. I like that. What was your suckiest work experience ever?
Oh God.
Doesn't have to be in film. It could be a.
Where do you even, I mean, I know where to know. Look, I've had projects blow up on me, right?
Mhm.
Things that you devoted a year of your life to and
Mm.
got within an inch of living. And then, whoever the person you partnered with on it blew it up,
Wow.
right? And had different priorities or different chemical compositions of their brain and things just went kaplooey.
Yeah.
Things like that are pretty awful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the headline, you invest yourself and you invest money, everything into something that then just dies on you and it's out of your control.
Mm.
That's a terrible thing to have.
Yeah. How do you get through something like that?
But well, you got to keep moving, and they can be, I mean, these can be devastating experiences, but to have, again, having family and children is really important. And then, but that's not magical stuff. It's grinding. You
Hmm.
just to keep moving and,
Yeah.
you're going to be down for a while and kind of acknowledging that. I think you're not expecting everything from yourself all at once,
Hmm.
I mean, forgive yourself, but I mean, allow yourself some sadness and mourning,
Yeah.
and but you got to keep moving, and you know, like when you break up with someone, I don't know, go on a date, just get out there. So pick
Yeah.
up some other project and start distracting, your head and into something else is the best
Mm,
idea. Best
yeah.
idea.
I think just the line, keep moving, is pretty much a good piece of advice in
Oh
general.
yeah, no retreat. Just soldier on. There's nothing more complicated or harder to do than that, but
Yeah. But you gotta.
you gotta.
Yeah. What what made you or what helped you sort of figure out that film was your calling?
You see the graduate in ninth grade, and then you're done. Like, there's nothing else to do after that.
Yeah.
Afraid, all of a sudden. And I will speak in the, in general to in the third person because it's not just me, but
Yeah.
all these other things from writing to theater to technical gadgetry, whatever, all the stuff photography, the stuff that you loved and just thought was fun, you
Hmm.
then see this thing that speaks so clearly and so loudly to what's possible. And you go, holy cow, I think like that. I must do that. And then you get addicted.
And how were you able to sort of sit in that and believe in that, right? Because I think for a certain amount of folks, the world of film feels almost fantastical, meaning
It
the
is.
idea that I could work in film just seems crazy. So some
It is
people might
crazy.
sort of feel a little bit of that and then resist it. But
Right.
you took it on. What do you know why?
Delusion. I mean, and I wish I was kind of joking, I mean,
Yeah.
every look, how do you climb Mount Everest, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you take one step, but to look
Mhm.
at that and think I can do that is freaking stupid.
Yeah.
And a real delusion, it's mind over matter, it's all of these things that you think it's a lottery ticket. It
Mhm.
requires, a great deal of good fortune and good luck, and you make your own luck, no doubt. I mean, you've got
Yeah.
to grinding and grinding, but unless you are one of a very few people who are really set up and kind of, positioned to then get handed the keys, and there's a
Yeah.
couple of those, God knows,
Hmm.
and there are others with trust funds, and God bless them as well.
Sure.
But otherwise, it's a pact you make with yourself,
Hmm.
that I don't, I tell my students this all the time. I'm like, if there's anything else in the world you can imagine yourself doing and being happy, go do that.
Mm.
Do that thing,
Yeah.
because there are easier lives, better life. There's all kind, it's not, you don't spend your life on a red carpet. Like that's not
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's a real, it's a compulsion, and
Hmm.
it chooses you. It's all those things. It's
Yeah.
just it's not a life choice. It's not a smart life choice.
Hmm.
It's not a life choice. It is
Yeah.
something that chose you, and then you start pursuing it as best you can figure in
Yeah.
that in time.
Yeah. I mean, it's clearly not the logical, rational choice if you just look at sort of the numbers of it and all that. But I
No,
love the idea that delusion can be this positive influence for you in a way that if you can embrace just enough of that, that tells you I could do this thing.
well, how do you start a company? It's the same. I mean,
Yeah.
like every
Same.
film is a
Yeah.
startup, right? I mean,
Hmm.
how do you start, a company that you think you're going to grow into something
Yeah.
that the world is going to start buying your stuff?
Right.
That's some amount of delusion.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. Actually, I think that's like a good bit of advice to embrace the delusion a little bit because that becomes your fuel to then deal with whatever comes at you,
Right.
throughout the
And then get
process.
married and have a significant other who goes, "What the fuck are you doing? It's time to redirect now. That one isn't working now." That
Yeah.
helps. You need,
Certainly
it's
helpful to
back to the
have some folks
pushback.
in your life. Yeah, I
You
get
need the
that.
pushback.
Yeah. So you've got this film called Jesters and Fools. I see it there behind you. What's
Always
that
fun.
all about? I actually watched it the other night, but for our audience, what's it all about?
Uh, what's it all about, Alfie? So I everything's a damn movie reference. So it's about our polarized country and how so much, although I'm afraid it's decreasing amount of it, but how so much of it is back to delusion or is an illusion. We're not
Yeah.
as polarized as we would think, looking at
Yeah.
media and social media
Mm-hmm.
and talking to our most hyperbolic, exorcised friends.
Yeah.
We are we have serious disagreements. We are at a fascinating period in our history,
Yes.
without question.
Yeah.
But the greater question of, do we hate each other? Does your neighbor hate you?
Mm.
Or should we be afraid to just speak rationally with each other about, hey, here's how I think things should be, or here's how I think to get there, and
Yeah.
you don't. Most people are not ready to tear you down or kill you or cancel you or whatever it is, because
Yeah.
there is, there is a segment, there's a very extremist segment on the left and on the right who,
Mm-hmm.
who charge each other up. And I'm afraid those segments are growing because we have not managed to tamp this down.
Yeah.
So, we are so afraid of each other
Mm-hmm.
that their numbers grow, because we start looking over there and going, God, those people are crazy over there.
Mm-hmm.
You get much better at articulating your side's points, and you find, camaraderie, and all this comes from a Duke University professor, Chris Bale. He
Mm.
founded the Polarization Lab there.
Okay.
And I started to, it was really during the pandemic, 2020, 2021, when, everything was kind of coming to a head. And my wife and I would, look around. I grew up in New York,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone just seemed to be crazy and
Yeah.
going crazy and at each
Mm-hmm.
other and ready to pounce at each other and accuse each other of just the worst things. And we're going, like, we didn't grow up like this. This is
Yeah.
not even the city we grew up in. This isn't the environment we grew up on. I always say, in high school, we'd sit by the lockers, we'd argue, we'd call each other commies and fascists, and then we'd go play handball,
Yeah.
and get pizza. And
Mm-hmm.
that was it, but it was a way that we were learning how to think, what we thought. We were learning from each other,
Yep.
but there was no animosity and hatred or the assumption of ill intent in each.
Yeah.
So, this was just festering, and I'm, as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, I'm going, well, what's the story to tell here, and what's a visual story to tell? And I was researching, polarization generally, and you quickly
Mm-hmm.
find social media as a driver.
Yeah.
And speaking to different academics, I landed with Chris Bale, and he has this great book, Breaking the Social Media Prism, that he was just publishing. And so I started, working with him, and I optioned the rights to the book to develop it. And I was thinking, okay, and it's got a lot of social science experiments that demonstrate the different parts of our personalities and psychology that make us susceptible to misperceiving each other, certainly in online environments,
Yeah.
and misperceiving ourselves as well. So it's fascinating, great stuff. But in thinking about who I wanted to hear talk about this stuff, it's the scientists are great, and it's all wonky, interesting stuff. But to who's going to really capture the absurdity of all of it as I see it, and that was comedians.
Mm.
So I was like, well, I want comedians to talk about this,
Yeah.
because great ones, they don't have well, they have their beliefs, of course, but the great ones fire in every direction, and they call bullshit where they
Yep.
see it, and they're funny in the process, and they get the metaphors that, really embed, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I started hanging out at the Comedy Cellar in Greenwich Village in New York,
Mm-hmm.
4 or 5 nights a week. And I would sit there nursing a beer in the bar upstairs with all the comedians around, and just kind of making no sudden movements, being very, quiet, like Jane
Yeah.
Goodall, just, trying to blend in until, someone go, well, what the hell are you doing here?
Right.
See, what are you doing here? And they go, oh, well, I'm doing this film and this is, don't you feel like, you travel the country from New York to LA and every little club in between, you talk to people, do you see the country that you see online? They'd all be like, no, man, like that's, there's always someone crazy on Twitter or Instagram
Yeah.
was or X now, but most people, and there's always one angry person in the audience, maybe like this who's getting a little whatever, but
Sure.
everyone's just laughing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, they're like, no, that's not really the country.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be like, great, come do an interview. So, it's like herding cats, but I wrote grants. I got some grant money and started shooting whoever happened to be around on a certain day
Mm-hmm.
and made this little 15-minute doc with Chris Bale from Duke and these
Mm-hmm.
comedians, Colin Quinn and Mo Amer and Rosebud Baker and Jim Norton, all these great people,
Yeah.
Nathan McIntosh, Dean Edwards. And they came through. I mean, they really have this great way of encapsulating the absurdity of what I was seeing. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've taken the film. It's at the National Liberty Museum in Philadelphia right now. It's part of this exhibit on free speech. It's
Mm.
on college campuses, playing. I partnered with Heterodox Academy and organizations with Braver Angels, ProHuman, and for different screenings and events and ways for professors or administrators who use it with students,
Yeah.
spark conversation and kind of give people, students, a safety umbrella to say something that maybe they wouldn't say because
Mm.
they've seen someone else in the classroom laugh at something.
Yeah.
And they go, "Oh, I'm not the only one." And
Mm-hmm.
which is so much of Chris Bale's work with Polarization is, look, you got to lift the middle, right? If you've got the crazy over here and the crazy over here,
Yeah.
right? There is still the majority here, but they're silenced. They feel like, hey, this conversation is crazy and I want just nothing to do with it.
Yep.
So you just disappear in the majority people.
Mm-hmm.
No, they're just trying to get through their lives. They're not, they're
Yeah.
not living like that. So, but you gotta be seen or you see others in your, in your boat in
Mm-hmm.
order to not disappear from conversation and just give a little pushback. Someone says something extreme and, just to go like, like, not really,
Yeah.
it's not quite like that. And maybe that person then goes down because they got
Right.
some pushback. But,
Mm-hmm.
the tone and tenor of our conversations just needs to change because we will implode. This just
Yeah.
isn't sustainable like this. It's
I
not good
feel
for
that.
health, and it's really not good for a democracy.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. A few things in there. I mean, one, the fact that you chose to work with comedians on this, one certainly seems really smart because I watched the film and it's both funny and enlightening. But it also connects to a piece of sort of culture that is caught up in some of this, meaning comedy has become politicized in a way. There are folks who get angry at comedians, and this is mostly, again, the folks on the extremes of either side who have this visceral reaction to a comedian who makes a joke that they don't like or seems to have a point of view that they don't like. And I don't remember that as much growing up either, even though people had points of view, right? It was more like you said, like, okay, George Carlin would say some crazy shit and he would definitely punch in all directions. And
Yeah,
then like you talk about it and you'd be like, yeah, I agree with that piece. And somebody else would be like, yeah, I thought that was total ridiculousness, but I agree with the other piece.
yeah, yeah.
So that's really interesting because I think that spills out into society at large and it spills into workplaces when you think about just humor and the
Yeah.
comfort of trying to bring humor into our lives, whether it's just hanging out with friends or hanging out at work and feeling okay with doing that. What's what's your take on that?
Well, there's a few things you made me think of. I mean, one
Yeah.
is so Rosebud Baker, who's one of the comedians. She's actually James Baker's granddaughter. She has specials on she's a writer at SNL. She has specials on Netflix, and she's great.
Yeah.
But something she told me, she's like, what's changed is that you'll see people in the audience and they're not laughing. They just want you to say something they agree with.
Mm,
And they just want to feel validated. So you say like,
mhm.
yeah, that, but they're not laughing.
Yeah.
She's like, it's such a bummer, right? Like I'm here to make
Hmm.
you like I'm just here to make you laugh. Like that's
Right.
really it.
Hmm.
All I know, a lot of comedians are like, all I know is at the end of this conjugation of words, there's a laugh. Like
Yep.
that's it. The
Uh-huh.
words don't even matter as long as I elicit a laugh, right?
Yeah.
So it's like that's change, and that's really a bummer. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're just going there to have someone validate your own feelings. And I think
Mm-hmm.
also what's evolved culturally is that our political identity has really become central to our core identity.
Yes.
Chris Bale talks about some, and John Haidt and others, I think, but that's a bad evolution,
Mm-hmm.
where people just see that, and that's a much you could talk about. I don't know if that's, you know, we've changed. We're not as religious as we
Yeah.
were. We're more segmented from each other. Even just
Mm-hmm.
community feels, less
Yeah.
tied together. We don't, there's the whole, join a club, bowling, all the stuff. Like,
Yeah.
and so what becomes the most meaningful thing? Well, in this media environment, maybe all the media we're consuming in this, you got to take a stand on whatever your political position is. And
Mm-hmm.
if that is your core sense of identity, and identity is a fragile thing,
Yeah.
you can feel tweaked. Your
Yeah.
identity can feel tweaked very easily online
Mm-hmm.
or in whatever. So I think that if you're there vulnerable laughing, and then all of a sudden this comedian says something that you think is wildly wrong or even dangerous to you or someone else, I've felt it, you
Sure.
know, go, hey, that,
Mm-hmm.
it feels dangerous.
Yeah.
But that's not healthy. It's not even a version of reality. You've got to be able to check that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's become much harder for people to check that sense.
Yeah. And it's interesting how it shows up. Like you said, there's sort of the quote unquote real world, which is I'm hanging out with my friends, and for the most part, at least people I know, like we disagree on stuff, like, and like we'll argue like crazy about it, but we are still friends,
Right.
and that's all okay. But I think it's like we've built this protective armor outside of that, meaning if somebody shows up at work and says a thing I don't agree with, I don't like that person. Or I don't know if I like my company anymore because now you've created an environment where people like that can say what they say. And then you get to social media and it's very much like, well, I don't want to hang out on X anymore because now it's veered too far to the right side. Or I don't want to go on Blue Sky because it's all lefties. Or the converse is I want to go to the place where I feel safe and then just escape into that bubble. And to your point earlier about we need the pushback, we're losing the pushback also,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like I'll go on X and, I'm sort of in the middle, like a lot of folks, right? And I'll go down different rabbit holes with people who are on an extreme on either side. And I get depressed. I'm like, oh my God, like it's like we're all just following this nugget of an idea down to its most extreme, horrific conclusion. And everybody's nodding their head and, kind of shaking their fist. I get scared, one, that some point that actually translates into reality. And then we're, to your point, sort of doomed. What, what are you, as you're creating this film, bringing it out into the world, what's the vision you have for the way we start to break some of this stuff apart?
Well, I mean, we need in-person human interactions.
Mm-hmm.
I hate social media. I
Yeah.
don't really use it. I mean,
Yeah.
I have accounts, and if I need to promote something, frankly, that's what it seems that's what it's for.
Yeah.
There's no other purpose for it, or as like a complicated Rolodex. Like if I need to
Mm-hmm.
find someone,
Yeah.
that's amazing. That's amazing that I can
Yeah.
find some. But it's not an environment where I want to live, or where I'm going to
Hmm.
actually start engaging someone in a serious conversation,
Yeah.
I know better. It feels awful.
Hmm.
And even just the environment feels awful. And that was clear to me. Well, it was clear to me from the very beginning that it was just stupid. Like I remember Facebook showed up and my friends nagged me to get on it. And eventually over months, whatever I did. And what we just like poked, that was when the poke was around. We like
Hmm.
poke each other. And we just like, it was ridiculous. He'd poke, oh, sure, Peter, here,
Yeah.
poke. Now, okay. And like it was so stupid, it was funny.
Yep.
But I'm like, that's about as useful as the thing got for me. So
Mm.
I think that the movie, what the movie is great for is for people to watch together and then use as a jumping off point to have conversations together.
Hmm.
It is very hard. It is very easy to hate people from a distance. It is certainly easy to hate people, online and virtually, and
Yeah.
you'll say all kinds of things you would never say in person.
Hmm.
It is very hard to hate, and because they're not human that way, but it's very hard to hate someone whose eyes, whose eyes you can look into.
Yeah.
I mean, people do it,
Yeah.
but it's certainly harder. And you will be, most people, except for the most extreme, will be easier with each other, more open to each other in
Hmm.
person.
Yeah.
So, that you gotta get out of your house, get off your fucking phone, and really join a club, go bowling. I think that is
Yeah.
it is terrific. I hate bowling, but go do something else. I don't know.
Yeah.
Go dancing, go, out, have a
Yeah.
picnic,
Well, everybody's doing the pickleball these days or whatever.
whatever.
I actually like bowling, but there's not one super close to me. But I would join a bowling league in a heartbeat, not because I'm any good at it, but there's something almost romantic about it to me. It
Sure.
reminds me of growing up, and it reminds me of like, yeah, the old TV shows where the guys put on the bowling shirts and had their
I
bag.
like the sounds. I like the sounds of it
Yeah.
very much. I don't know. I don't know, waiting to throw a ball, I guess.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. Yeah. What I like about the film, in addition to sort of its messages, the messengers you chose. I mean, those comedians, they are they are both funny, obviously, um, and almost extremely, I would say, funny. But there is a lot of wisdom that comes through when they're not trying to be funny, meaning when they're saying like, why are we doing this? Why do we say this? Like there's a lot of clarity. And in some ways, I think there's a relationship between the two, meaning the more we open ourselves up to the funny, meaning appreciating humor, bringing humor, letting our sense of humor emerge, I actually think that's a pathway to wisdom. And it's probably one of the reasons so many of these comedians are such good messengers.
Well, they're exploratory. I mean, they're deeply exploratory, right? I mean,
Hmm.
they take every little nugget and they turn it around and
Yeah.
they like, what is this thing? I
Hmm.
remember watching Jerry Seinfeld once, just talk about some of it and the idea of like an ice cream truck. He's like, an ice cream truck is just, he's like, a comedian will find the idea of an ice cream truck. It's a truck that's bringing you ice cream. He's like,
Right.
that's funny, and, we all just see the ice cream truck, but a
Yeah.
comedian will, look at that and go, that's ridiculous.
Right.
My, there's a truck here.
Yeah.
It's designed to bring me what? Ice cream.
Hmm.
So they are the great, I love them. I don't want to look, they're not philosopher kings, right?
Right.
But I love that they are the originators of their own work. Like someone else, I mean, sure, during concerts, whatever, some people write material for them, but
Yeah.
overall, they're there working out their own material. It's
Hmm.
their thoughts.
Yep.
It's and it's not like someone wrote their songs for them or
Hmm.
whatnot. So it is, those thoughts are their work and their
Yeah.
words, and it comes from looking for bullshit, looking for the where reality and where things are matching reality, or we're fooling ourselves, and
Hmm.
they call themselves out. They're very vulnerable. They make them so they will share. crazy intimate things about
Mm-hmm.
themselves and their lives that
Yeah.
no one else would, which gives them credibility
Mm-hmm.
when they speak. Sometimes, you know, not in a good way. But look, I think that the great ones shoot in every direction
Mm-hmm.
because they are really just looking for, again, they're not philosopher kings, they're not truth seekers, but they're looking for a truth. And
Yeah.
when they find it, we laugh
Mm-hmm.
instinctively. And you can't, unless you're really trying not to, and you're sitting in the audience so angry,
Mm-hmm.
you can't help it.
Yeah.
And they found something.
Yeah. I think that's the beauty of humor and laughter is that it is like the most true emotion because you can't contain it. It is just, it literally bursts out of you. And so it is this barometer in a way for like, there's something there. Right.
Yeah.
And I
And
think,
we're talking about, right? It's
yeah,
we're talking
like
about.
the purpose of the jester back in the day was a little bit of like, so that the king would have somebody calling him out, basically. Like there was an awareness that I need that. Now, sometimes some of those kings went overboard and were not so kind to the jesters, but in general, there was at least an awareness of the human condition in that. And I think about, in workplaces, and some of this is particularly strengthened over the last several years. There's become an oppressive unfunniness to the workplace. It's sort of a extreme HRification of work. And I get it. There's good intention behind it. I get it. Like we don't want sort of places to become where people are being downright awful to each other. So I get the impotence and there's lawsuits and all that. But what it does is it takes away our ability to, I think, do really good work because we're not using one of the best tools in our toolkit to get through the bullshit, to recognize whether an idea is real, whether there's truth in it, because humor is actually a fast forward button to that.
Yeah.
How does humor show up in your work? I mean, you work in a different way than probably a lot of my audience. So how does it show up there for you?
I mean, and I've been in different environments and whatnot. I mean, the problem, many work environments just they're not human environments, right?
Yeah.
And so they're poisoned from the get-go.
Yeah.
So how do you be a person inside an environment that is not meant for humanity?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you can't, they say, bring your whole self to work. That's bullshit. No one wants your whole self. They don't even want part of you. They want like this much of yourself, you know?
Yeah.
Uh, and that's, like even when you go to a dinner party, you're bringing some of yourself. Like at work,
Mm-hmm.
because there's manners. At work, it's like this much.
Right.
And there are reasons for that, but at the same time, it makes it a really terrible environment. I mean,
Yeah.
look, a film set, they're long days. It's,
Mm-hmm.
frequent grinding, a lot of stress
Yeah.
because the results are immediate,
Mm-hmm.
right? You've got a set day and you've got X number of scenes or whatever you need to shoot in that shots to get off in that day. And if
Mm-hmm.
you don't make that day, well, either you're loading up your next day more, or you've totally lost the opportunity because you're not even in this location.
Yeah.
And so to fix the problem, either you can't, or it's going to cost a whole lot of money to fix it that then is going to take away from something else. And
Mm-hmm.
so the pressure on all of it is great. And what giving each other a lot of shit or joking with each other, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
definitely takes the whatever, the poison out of a
Yeah.
lot of that. And it's, and there are certain personalities. I mean, it self-selects also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you just to live that life and the uncertainty of it. I mean, everyone's a freelancer,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Takes a certain kind of grit and self-awareness, perhaps. And there are plenty
Mm-hmm.
of assholes. I'm not saying there aren't,
Sure.
but you know, most people are not like hypersensitive.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone's being an asshole, that doesn't go over well. And
Yeah.
then, you are going to get shunned from the tribe, right?
Right.
But it does, when it's working well, it's a good environment because, look, everyone has to do their job.
Mm-hmm.
well. And if they don't, they're not coming back the next day
Yeah.
because there's just too much riding on it and it's too hard on everybody else. And
Yeah.
um, so you frequently can end up with, when you have a good set that's running well, it's got a good bunch of people, you become this little tribe. Uh, you're not a family. I always hate that with work. We're a
Yeah.
family. That's bullshit. That's also like that, it's a lie. And
Yeah.
it puts this thing over the office environment, whatever. Like your family can't fire you, right?
Right.
Your family can't send you to HR. They can do other things to you, but not that. You're not a
Yeah.
family.
Mm-hmm.
So that also I think makes some work environments, it
Terrible.
confuses the issue.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting you describe the sort of more corporate world often as not human, and that's a big part of what I'm trying to put into the world. And it's interesting because, you're affiliated with ProHuman Foundation, and that meaning of that word tends to focus on what your film is trying to focus on, and this ability for us to just be more human and more sort of open to each other and recognizing the human core truths that bring us together. But there's this added layer to it when I think about workplaces, which is a much baser definition, which is to actually just literally be human, to be a damn human being in that setting. And the fact that so many of those environments are set up to strip that away. In many ways, I think that's what the bring your whole self to work is trying to get to, right? Because I agree with you. That statement ultimately is bullshit because what it feels like is permission to just like vomit all of your worst characteristics over people versus what I think at least a lot of people are aiming for is I just want to be able to show up at work and not feel like I'm just put into this ridiculous box that I can't even process anything. And to me, whether it's through humor or whether it's through just being able to have normal conversations, whether it's not using stupid corporate language and acronyms and just circling back and all the BS, like I think people are craving that. And what's beautiful about the set environment and, having worked on commercials and stuff, like one of the reasons I think a lot of people in advertising love going on set is because it feels more human. It is like a tribe coming together to accomplish a thing. We all have to build a house together or whatever,
And what's amazing about it is also everyone's empowered to do their job,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
You don't go through 6 levels of middle management,
Mm-hmm.
to whatever. Like I
Yeah.
hired you because you're a great
Yeah.
electrician. We need to hook up, go. And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
looking at you,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just know that, by the time we're set up for the shot, that's going to be, or you let me know and you move quick and we're there,
Yeah.
or, whoever it is, the grip or the gaffer or the whatever, everyone knows what they need to do. And
Mm-hmm.
again, if they don't, they're not coming back the next day.
Yeah.
So you feel some, you feel agency,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
which I think is missing a great deal.
Yeah.
You feel valued.
Mm-hmm.
Look, that said, everyone on set, you'll never see a bigger bunch of complainers ever, right?
Yeah.
Everyone bitches about everything, and no, everyone feels undervalued all the time. But at the same time, they still feel like their job is their job, right?
Yep.
And they know how to do it better than everybody and everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
that said, it's full of personalities,
Mm-hmm.
but I not having the corporatization
Yeah.
of it all is freeing. That personality type gravitates to that. And
Mm.
you put them in an office environment and we're like, the fuck am I? Like,
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
understand. Why are you speaking to me like that?
Yeah.
Where did you learn to speak like where'd those
Right.
words
And you
come
act
from?
like it's normal and you're
You
not.
act like it's normal.
Yeah.
Like, who taught you to speak like this?
Right.
And I don't know what school did you have to go to use this jargon and this
Yeah.
cadence that's bizarre,
It
you
is. And
know?
it is non-human, I think, at some level. And I don't know where it came from. I mean, I suppose it emerged from industrial age like trying to sort of assembly line everything and then natural human protective mechanisms to create a bloat and all that kind of stuff. Like, and so the purity that you're sort of mentioning of a set environment where it's like the electric person does the electric stuff and the light guy does the light stuff, and the AD does what an AD does and all that stuff. Like, I actually think, and it's interesting because I had a few guys on a few weeks ago, and they're building a sort of ad agency, but more just what they're calling like a comedic business support ability to help people bring comedy to their work, so for advertisers. But they're also trying to create an environment that is built around the basic principles of having people come together and be human, and leaning much less into the structures of an ad agency, which has more of the layers and the things, and more just like bringing in smart people who know how to do the smart thing, and allowing that to have more of that organic feeling. And I think that's where I could at least potentially see work going in the future. I mean, because more and more people are becoming freelance. There is a move away from that. And the idea that you have sort of this sort of Rolodex of folks that are in your world, and they're experts, and they all do certain things really well, and they bring both that skill, and you also kind of know, like, that person's going to be the first one to call bullshit, or that person's just really funny and knows how to break the room down when the stress is at a million. That process for bringing people together to do things, whether you're making a film or you're building a new piece of software, I don't really think it matters. And I even wonder if we'd be better off if that was more of the model for work rather than the zoo-like environment of the
corporate. I mean, look, it's hard, right? So there's a trade-off, obviously. If you're a freelancer, you have no stability. Health insurance tends to come from employers. So unless you're a guild member or whatever, you're not getting health care. But you do have the freedom of, look, if you're good at what you do and people enjoy working with you, well, you're getting calls for other gigs, right? If you work in a company, you can't just be fired, which is part of the reason why they need, you can't just have the asshole running around the office, being an asshole to other people and cutting them out, or being downright, prejudice or whatever. So you see why stuff develops. It's kind of, it's like, this is why we can't have nice things, right? It's like, because one person or, some subset of people just ruin it for everybody. And now, now we need HR, and now we need these processes, and now we all need to speak to each other like we're, AI bots. And so, but the trade-off is you get some stability, you get some protection and that kind of thing. Whereas if you're a freelancer, you get none of that stuff. But you get to live like a gypsy.
So there's that. I mean, I know in the sort of Hollywood model, there are a few different unions and things like that.
Sure.
I often wonder if that would probably become needed if corporate work became a little more of strike teams and tactical kind of setups, if there were unions set up to at least create some kind of a structure for things like healthcare and such. I don't know how it actually plays out.
I don't know, or just a way to separate healthcare from employment. Like that emerged from, I think it was World War II, when you couldn't right? Am I right if I'm remembering this? That they couldn't offer more salary caps, but they could offer health. They started offering health insurance as an enticement for people,
an incentive
to them, right? And then it became this thing, and now it's detached from the anyway. So it's that's a whole other subject, but
it is one I think I agree with you. I would love to see that detached, however it gets detached, because it's becoming an increasing source of stress, because we are becoming an increasingly gig-based, freelance-based, contract-based economy. I want to come back to the ProHuman Foundation for a second, just because I'm curious from your perspective, what drew you to them, and what is it about them that you're helping to kind of put into the world?
Well, I mean, you want you got to find a tribe, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you can't do any of this by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And some of, that part of like raising the middle. Look, I mean, I can, plant a flag and light a trash can on fire, say something crazy, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get, 13% of the population to rally around me, right?
Yeah.
And but if you're just like, hey, let's just be kind of human and people, and let's not try and view the world through some doctrine and be much more open to each other.
Yeah.
Not a That's a tough bumper sticker, man.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So, you find as you go through in these different organizations, certainly as you're putting out a movie or whatever, be it ProHuman or Heterodox or Braver Angels or Builders or National Governors Association. Governor Cox had an effort, the Disagree Better effort
Mm.
through the National Governors Association, all these different groups that I started getting involved with.
Mm-hmm.
And, everyone kind of knows everyone. You find yourself at these
Yeah.
convenings, as
Mm-hmm.
there's another corporate word you find. You're now at convenings. I had no idea that was a thing where
Yeah.
people ideate.
Idea. Yep.
That's
Mm-hmm.
not a word.
Yep.
But so finding people who help, you amplify your stuff or who have an idea, and you can be like, oh, have you thought about it like this? And
Yeah.
just networks that where basically like-minded enough that you can help each other
Yeah.
and be more, I guess, visible is that thing of, because you can't be alone. If you stand
Mm-hmm.
up all by yourself, you're going to get trounced.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have groups and whatnot, then you're not alone. And other
Yeah.
people see, hey, I'm not alone too.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned the bumper sticker, and then you talked about this idea, like if we're like-minded enough. And I think that feels like the tension we're fighting against here, right? Meaning if I retreat into one of the corners on social media, we're all very like-minded, right? And there is like some dopamine hit that comes from that. But when you gather the 50% ish in the middle, there's a bit of a spread there. Meaning if you really start to drill down,
Right.
I'm going to
But that's
disagree.
people.
It is, right? But like it's hard, it's not connecting to the same, I think, neurological centers that those extremes have. So they have a sort of an advantage out of the gate, which is I can hack into your brain and make you feel this rush of amazingness by loving us and hating them.
Right.
And then there's this space, what you're talking about, ProHuman, and there's Braver Angels, and I was connected with Fair for a little bit, and some other ones that are out there, and then some of those others you talked about. Like there is this it's almost an intellectual connection of like, we all sort of agree that as humans, we should be, finding room for disagreement and trying to get along and not tamping ourselves into these spaces.
Right.
But it doesn't always hit you in the visceral way. Now, is it through works like your film and things like that that allow us to feel it that way? I mean, how do we fight against the fact that there's this dopamine drip going into the extremes, and we're maybe operating in a different sphere?
I mean, it all starts with ourselves, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
first of all, it's not catastrophizing, right? I mean, it's very hard. You see something that looks scary or dangerous over there,
Yeah.
and in some ways might even be.
Hmm.
But, to still feel the ground under your feet and realize that, that there are no exploding, fireballs around you
Hmm.
is in taking a breath and going, that, yes, what I'm seeing there is real.
Yeah.
It's happening. I don't, but to then extrapolate that it means everything or that the world is exploding
Yeah.
is a step, right? But that's
Hmm.
part of the illusion of media, right? That the whole world is this screen for us,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
what that always leaves out is everything that's happening around it because it's a frame.
Mm.
Someone or something is framing the world for you here,
Yeah.
but there is everything else around it
Mm.
that we don't, because the blinders of it, we don't
Yeah.
see. Keep remembering that I find to be, important, and not being afraid to engage.
Hmm.
And that doesn't mean jumping in and arguing with somebody, right? Or fighting.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, there's the tell me more response, which is always, you know, sometimes disarming for
Yeah.
someone. And someone who just said something insane, if you go tell me more,
Right.
they never actually thought about it. They didn't really have
Yeah.
thoughts on it. They might just kind of trip up on it and back off because
Yeah. It's like, wait, that was the
what?
whole, that's the whole thing.
Right. You know, or if you just start drilling, you know, asking about it, they start to calm down. And then, you know, it's knowing, well, also when not to engage. Like this is a crazy person.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, whatever they're spouting has nothing to do with what they're actually talking about. They're
Yeah.
angry, they hate their mother. I don't know. But like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I can't break that. So,
Yeah. Mm.
but whatever, maybe I'll say one thing just to create a little friction so that whatever crazy thing you said just, you know, doesn't glide through the world and hit everyone
Mm-hmm.
else and create this negative impact where everyone thinks everyone's like that person.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard. It's I don't, you know, we're all doing what we can, I
Yeah.
guess, you
Yeah.
know, remembering that most people are not the crazy and most people are open to having a conversation. But, you know, does that stuff belong in the work environment? I don't think so. I don't think corporations should be
Yeah.
making statements about everything that
Yeah.
happens in the world or anything that happens in the world unless it has something very particular to do with maybe their
Their
corporate or
business.
university business, you know, like that's just politicizing everything or making everything into a cause.
Yeah.
We can't live like that. And that's
Yeah.
that whole thing about our identities have become,
Mm.
right, these whatever, a political stance or a social
Yeah.
stance. That isn't to
Mm-hmm.
say those things aren't important,
Yeah.
but, and, you know, and very important sometimes, but to make that into every breath must speak to that.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, you just, you're paralyzed. You paralyze yourself, you paralyze everyone around you.
I agree. I think it is a sort of a version of catastrophizing where everything is taken to the nth and then it almost forces our hand to be like, well, if this is at that level, then I have to talk about it. But could kind of circle back around some of the HR language that gets talked about. I'm not sure how inclusive it is when a company takes a stand on a particular issue, knowing that even if you're in an environment where you think most people here agree with it, some people aren't. And so now you've created a really interesting work environment where you feel
Right.
excluded.
Look, I think there's that. And then there's also that, well, frequently that, you know, those stances are extreme stances.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, and there's no nuance.
Mm-hmm.
A statement by your employer, you
Mm-hmm.
can't argue with it or question or be like, look, I totally hear what you're saying, but you know, there's also that's there's no room for that.
Exactly.
So all that does is make you an outcast
Mm-hmm.
or silenced or whatever because
Yeah.
you can't push back an inch.
Mm-hmm.
And so that also becomes a non-human
Yeah.
environment. Whereas if you're sitting with your friends and your friend says, you can
Yeah.
be like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Sure.
but sure, but you know, there's also,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and then you finish your beer, right? So
Yeah.
same thing.
So what's the one thing you hope people take away from your film?
Well, I think it's just that in that I think most people are not extremists and most people are like exhausted, the exhausted majority, as we say, that
Mm-hmm.
they're not alone
Yeah.
and that most people around them don't want to feel like this, don't want to behave like this,
Mm-hmm.
and that whatever is happening up here in our political world with our elected officials and
Mm-hmm.
our media, you know, overlords and what, you know, whatnot, whatever's
Yeah.
happening in all that world,
Mm-hmm.
I know we all feel like we must, I have a something to say, whatever.
Yeah.
We don't. Like you do, but you don't.
Yeah.
Like down here, that's not where we live.
Yeah.
That's not where we live. And, you know,
Mm-hmm.
people are not who they vote for.
Mm-hmm.
That is, whoever I cast my ballot for, I did not elect them as my avatar in all things.
Mm-hmm.
They don't stand for me. They barely stand for themselves.
Yeah.
So, um,
Yeah.
so but that's it's a very easy thing to go, well, you know, my friend voted for that person and that person is evil incarnate and therefore my friend supports evil
Yeah.
and
He's
I
not
don't
my
like
friend
evil.
anymore. Yeah.
So, my friend anymore. But, that's not. And the problem with that is, and if our political identities are our identity, well, then there's a straight line through
Then it
that.
has to be like you
And
have,
it
that's the
has to.
inevitable conclusion, right? Yeah. I mean, I really liked how you talked about the phone being the frame, and it actually reminded me of an old time magazine campaign they did years ago where they would have that red outline from the magazine over one piece of an image, but then they would show you the full image. And
Yeah.
their point was like, read the magazine, learn the whole story. Basically, there's the headline, but then there's the news. But I think
Yeah.
it's arresting to think of it that way because we do, as soon as we're here, everything goes soft focus around it and it becomes our world. And just
Totally.
to know, like to have the awareness of that and be able to then pull yourself out of it, at least on a more regular basis. And like you said, just go meet somebody, have a drink with somebody, have coffee, play pickleball, go
Right.
bowling, do the thing. Yeah.
No, totally. Look, that is the media problem. They show you a picture, they show you an image, and it was
Yeah.
snapped or cropped or whatever. And then
Mm-hmm.
outside that frame, well, there's a much broader picture.
Yeah.
And if you're a painter and you compose a painting, you're composing a world. And if
Mm-hmm.
if it's a great painting, well, you've encapsulated the world and life, your point of view through it. But a
Mm-hmm.
photograph of life or even a documentary isn't even journalism, not that journalism is journalism anymore.
Yeah.
But, like the trial by documentary thing
Mm-hmm.
is crazy. There's no editorial control. I mean, you can get sued, but there's no editorial standards for
Right.
documentary. But people see a documentary and then they think they really
That's
understand the
it.
truth. Everything's composed for you. I mean,
Yeah.
my film, I chose clips and I wove
Yep.
them together. There's stuff I didn't include. You'll never
Right.
know, but
Yeah. It's more of
uh,
a piece of a bigger mosaic, right? It's like, okay,
always.
that's one piece, but we need to see the whole damn thing. Yeah. So I know I fired a few questions at you. I wanted to give you a chance to turn things around to our audience. Do you have a question that you'd like to ask our audience?
I do have a question I'd like to ask our audience. Yeah, well, you asked me this, I forgot. I wanted to ask about what made them, what did I say? I wrote it to you. Remind me what I wrote.
Yeah. Do you think you could find more humor in life's annoyances than you do?
Right, right, right. Because I know I can get super, annoyed by everything.
Yeah.
I do try and laugh about it. So I think about that a lot. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do we have to react, dial everything to 11
Mm-hmm.
every time someone does something? Louis C.K. has this thing. I remember a bit he did about someone cut him off in traffic. And
Yeah.
I hope that person dies. He's like, they made me press a pedal a little bit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. He's always had a good way at reframing
he does
the
reframe.
thing that, like he always had the thing about, I think, Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi is a little buggy in the plane. He's like, you're in a metal tube 30,000 feet up and the internet's not working. Like it's freaking magical.
Right.
It works at all. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, it's perspective, which is what humor
Yeah.
brings.
Yeah. I
Brings
agree.
a perspective. Look, we're a bunch of apes with cell phones, right? Let's remember that.
Might be that might be the title of this episode. I'll play with that. So this is the DesuckifyWork podcast. If you could wave a magic wand and kind of create a more fully desuckified work world, what does that look like?
What does it look like? I mean, I think because for me, the movie set but it's not possible in all environments, right? But I
Yeah.
do, where people are given I think people have very realistic expectations when everyone's interests are aligned. Like I show up here, you pay me, I do my job, I leave.
Yeah.
Clear like that,
Mm-hmm.
And so, but when it gets, hey, we're a family, but I'm sending you to HR, or that where things get
Yeah.
muddied, or you're not given, or you're just not given the you're kind of all the responsibility with none of the authority, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a mess.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I think people want to feel proud of what they do.
Yeah.
And so if you're given responsibility and treated like a grown up and not crushed into a little box, I think it makes people feel good. Unfortunately, there are environments where there are reasons why those things happen, and not everyone's good at their job.
Yeah. No, that's all fair. I will say certainly my little corner of the world, I'm trying to fight that a little bit. Those boxes that people are put in, I'd love to see them at least.
But I do think some humor around all of it. Again, just
Yeah.
remembering we're apes with cell phones.
Yeah.
And so, we all have to, you show up at work, it's serious, you got to do the job, you have responsibilities, but at the same time, remember, we're apes with cell phones.
Yeah. And that's like a beautifully simple note. And underneath that, some of the things you said, I mean, like, yeah, we want to feel good about the work. We want to feel like we have some autonomy around the work. We want to feel actually like we have some accountability if I actually have the ability to make those choices. And a lot of those non-human corporate environments just soften all of that. Accountability becomes dispersed. Language loses any edges and therefore loses any meaning by that. You give it that corporate language, we're ideating and we're, I forget the other term you pulled out, but like when those words have very vague meanings, if they might as well have no meaning.
Right. KPIs.
We're just floating in nothingness. And that becomes a really hard place to actually be like, okay, I know what I'm doing. I know how to do it well. And somebody else can point at me and go, hey, you did that well. Nobody knows. And that's the problem, I think. Right. To wrap up, I always like to do something a little silly. I ask people to do a sound effect. If you ever listen to my show, you hear sounds. You hear a lot of cat meowing and things like that on my show. That's my shtick. But do you have a sound that you want to add to our library?
There's this Robert Altman's movie MASH. Hawkeye Pierce, Donald Sutherland has this little whistle, his like trademark whistle he does when something is just absurd, or or the official structure just won't let him do something good, and just the whole absurdity of it. And he always just goes, and walks off. Like, it's that. It's like, whatever, the sergeant shut him down and he's like, but let me do that. No. Off you go. That's it. You just give it to God and there's nothing else you can do.
I love that. That's awesome. Well, that will not only appear in the show where it is now, but I'll put it in the intro to the show somewhere just to add a little flavor. So the last question I ask everybody is, where can people learn more about your film and all the good work you're doing?
Well, Jestersandfools.com is the website. GothamArts.com is my company website for, it's got all whatever brand stuff in journalism or whatever. But Jesters and Fools is there for, if you want to use the film for an event or something like that. All the info's there.
Awesome. Well, I will help point people in that direction in the show notes. And I just want to say thanks, Rob. This was a fun conversation. It was enlightening, and it actually gives me a little hope despite all the craziness we talked about. I
didn't mean to do that. Sorry.
So you'd believe it or not.
I don't want to mislead
some
you.
hope out there. Yeah, I actually think your movie creates some hope too. I mean, I know there's some edge to it too, which I appreciate, but let's all of us folks in that kind of messy middle, let's find each other.
Hey, cheers. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. Take care.
Too.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to the DesuckifyWork podcast. And a huge thanks to Rob for bringing deep and sharp insight to the show. You can learn more about Rob's movie at JestersandFools.com and check out his site at GothamArts.com. If you enjoyed the conversation and would like to help your teams bring their absolute best to work, I invite you to schedule a free half-hour discovery session. Type meow in the calendar invite, and I'll also send you a free DesuckifyWork t-shirt. Bye, everyone.